Hi, everybody. Welcome into the Bulls Talk podcast brought to you by Toyota. Let's go places. I'm Kevin Anderson, joined by our Bulls insider from NBC Sports Chicago and NBCSportsChicago.com, the great Casey Johnson, our podcast producer, the great Tony Gill. This is part 2 of our Bulls Mailbag edition of the podcast. We, over the last weekend, asked for questions from Bulls fans, any topic you wanted, including Star Wars, and we got a few of those too. And we got some really, really good ones. Part 1, we dived into a lot about the roster and Torrey Craig and Buzelis, and we've got a lot more to get to in part 2. So, guys, let's start it off. I'll start with the Buzelis question. This is something that's interesting. I really didn't think about this till this question was asked from Senpai Freights. Do you see Matas competing in the slam dunk contest next All-Star game?
I know one thing. Well, I shouldn't say I know. I have a sense on one thing. He would say yes if he's asked. This guy does not back down from much of anything. He seems to relish being the center of attention and taking on any challenge coming his way. So I would be surprised if he said no if he were asked. Now, let's slow our roll a little bit here. He is a rookie. But look, that contest is not usually populated by stars anymore. They're usually trying to find young, exciting players that, maybe don't have the on-court name recognition. So never ruled out. We'll see where the season goes. But my sense, just being around him as little as I have, is that he would say yes if he's asked.
You saw the slam dunks at Vegas Summer League, KC.
You did. I did.
Put him in there. Put him in the slam dunk contest. There's no doubt.
Those were in-game dunks. I don't know what he's got in his bag when the whistle hasn't stopped. So we'll have to see.
Well, you know what? He can work with Zach during practice one day and get some tips and make it happen. Like, he could get some good competition dunks in there. He's got the ability.
Who said Zach doesn't have value for this team, right?
Hey, he's been there before.
I kind of if he's asked, I definitely think he will go. Look, there's different styles of dunking, right? Like, they're different winners. He needs to harp on his power in the dunker, because he's not the greatest leaper in terms of jaw-dropping heights that he can reach by jumping. So that's not his style. And with all that open space and all that, that you have in a dunk contest, that's a key factor in making a dunk look good. Is how high can you jump? And I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no. I don't think he's going to be asked to be a part of the dunk contest. I think he's more of an in-game dunker. He's a full contact, body-to-body guy that he will dunk on you, but it is different in the contest, in a contest space.
Let me say this. If he catches a couple bodies in the first half of the season, I think the momentum for putting him in the slam dunk contest will grow. But I think that's going to be largely dependent upon how many minutes and significant minutes he gets in November and December. Then people will be clamoring for him to be in the slam dunk contest. I would not rule it out, but to what KC said earlier, the slam dunk contest isn't a star of stars appearing. This is a situation in which a lot of the lesser known players, the reserves off the bench who are very athletic, get in the game or get in the competition. So I think there's definitely a possibility there if he stays healthy and can have some pretty good in-game dunks to get Bulls fans to start doing a hashtag or a social media push to get him in the slam dunk contest. Our second question has to do with Buzelis from IO Muse. What are you guys expecting from Matas this season? And do you think he will live up to the hype and praise he's received so far?
I mean, he's 19. He's going to have a lot. He's going to have a lot of mistakes. I think he's going to have the opportunity to play through mistakes. And it doesn't, quite frankly, matter what he does next year. They're not going for a championship next year. It matters. Let me rephrase that. It matters, but it doesn't matter in terms of you don't need to be perfect. Doesn't need to win Rookie of the Year. He just needs to go out and play and develop his game. And so my expectations are just for him to kind of continue on the path that we saw in Summer League, showing that edge, showing the ball handling ability, showing the desire to seek out contact and get to the line. The defensive instincts I thought were very strong. as far as, expectations, mine are pretty minor because the Bulls are going to be, in the 20s or 30 win category. And, they're in a developmental stage. So they're not winning a championship. So my expectations are pretty minor.
We'll get into the depth chart and lineup thing our next question, but specific to Buzelis, I don't see him starting. So my expectations are he'll be a reserve off the bench, top 3 off the bench in the rotation. Certainly, I think he will get significant minutes. I think he'll get at least 15 a game. But in terms of having an impact with that, I mainly want to see from him that aggressiveness that we saw from him in summer league. I want to see that carry over into training camp, preseason, regular season. I want to see that kind of like man with no fear that we saw in summer league, and that's what I'm going to be looking for. And does he have areas of the game he needs to develop? Absolutely. And it's difficult for any rookie in this league. There are a lot of things they need to work on and off the court and get in the routine, keeping your body healthy. Obviously, he's going to be playing more games in a 6-month stretch than he probably has in his entire life. That's going to be tough. And Tony, to a question you answered in our last edition of the Bulls Talk podcast, is about like finding rest, and it's about when to know to dial it back for certain players. And that can be hard. Like, guys, the rookie wall is a real thing that guys usually hit in January. And so I just want to see him be consistent. I want to see him stay healthy, work on his game. And if he can provide some thunderous in-game dunks to get Bulls fans at the UC out of their seat and give us hope for what could be the future, then great. But my expectations for Buzelis aren't really high. Like, I'm not expecting him to start 82 games and average 20 points a game and anything crazy like that. I just want to see him contribute, work on his overall game, and then be what we would consider a fundamental part of the core of the next version of the Bulls.
I'm expecting at least and this is very bold, but an all rookie second team visit. But here's my caveat, and it's something to KC mentioned on mistakes and playing through mistakes. I'm wondering, is he going to have the chance to play through mistakes? Because I'm thinking about Patrick Williams, right? Like, he never really got the opportunity to play through mistakes. He had like one game right at the end of the season where he was allowed to, okay, Patrick, we'll figure it out. I think the Minnesota game at the end of the year where DeMar sat and Zach sat. But I need a season of that for Matas. And that's why I think that he can live up to the hype and the praise that he's received. And the one thing that I'm expecting to see, and I hope it doesn't get dashed because of the fear of being pulled from games or stuff like, maintain that aggressiveness, right? Like, that's all we wanted to see from Patrick is consistent aggressiveness. And we never got it. And we now know the type of player he is and how he can contribute in other ways. But that expectation is not on him to be offensively aggressive, to try and impact games. Like, I don't think, and I'm predicting, I don't think we're going to forget that Matas is in games on a consistent level, because I think he wants to impact games. And the rookie year, obviously, Bulldog, you mentioned it, maintain the rest factor, make sure that when that rookie wall hits, he knows how to work himself out of it. Those are important, but aggression is what I want to see throughout this time. Let him make full, like, hard-blown mistakes, right? Like, aggressive mistakes is what I'm looking for, and not in fear of being pulled out because of those mistakes. This is what you're not winning a championship here. This is a rebuild, retool year. All the emphasis needs to be on that part, because I think he will be a key to the Bulls' future on how he develops specifically, is where that window is going to either widen or shorten with the Bulls.
Tony, I'm a little bit more optimistic on there will not be a short hook for him because of the expectations this season. Now, we're going to get to media day in late September, and they're going to say publicly that they expect to make a playoff run and contend for a playoff spot, certainly the play-in. But I think internally, and I think as far as realistically, that's going to be an outside shot given this roster. And I don't think they're necessarily going to be bad. And I think we've got a question about wins later on, which we'll get to. But I think there will be room for mistakes. There will be room for development among a lot of the young players on this team. And that certainly extends to Buzelis. I don't think it's going to be, you just made one bad turnover, you're out, right? Because we need to win this game because we've got to get a top 4 seed in the East or top 6 seed in the East to avoid the play. And like, I don't think it's going to be like that. I think we know Billy doesn't necessarily historically always use his rookies and second-year players in high minutes. However, for all intents and purposes, this is a developing season for this team, and I think he will get consistent minutes, and I think he will be allowed to grow and make mistakes and develop without him getting pulled and being like, okay, you just had 2 bad turnovers. You're only playing 4 minutes the next game. All right, next question has to do with the depth chart from at Adam Wilhelm 1. Talk through your lineup and depth chart and react over under to wins this season. Let's start with they're 2 very different questions. We addressed this a couple episodes ago with us, but let's first go through what we believe the starting lineup will be and who we believe will be the key consistent contributors off the bench for this team. So, Casey, you and I have talked about this before. We were both in agreement, and Tony, I'm certainly want to hear your opinion on this. Specific to the starting lineup, a healthy roster with the roster we have today, I believe the starting lineup will be Vooch and P. Will up front, and that these are going to be fully interchangeable, but the 3 wing/backcourt spots starting will be Zach, will be Kobe, and will be Giddey. Do all of you believe that is consistent across the board, or do you believe there may be a change there?
I agree.
No, I agree.
I don't see any other way. I've seen some people suggest on Twitter that could Matas start over P. Will. I would say that would be extremely unlikely to happen. It would take, in my mind, an injury for that to occur. Even if Buzelis has a great training camp, I would still say that's extremely unlikely to have him start at any point in October. And given that what we've seen out of Kobe's not coming off the bench. You didn't trade Caruso for Giddey to have Giddey come off the bench. And you're not asking the face of your franchise, highest paid player on your team to come off the bench either. There's already a little.
Our guy Sam Smith at the very own Bulls.com is suggesting Pat Williams start at 3, Buzelis start at 4, and Zach come off the bench. So let's go. Let's go.
Sam loves throwing logs on the fire. Sam's throwing logs on the fire there.
The best part was he said Zach playing against the second unit would help revive his value. I'm like, what are we doing here?
Sam, come on, Sam.
I'm here. Let's go. Let's go. Chaos. Here for it.
Sam's just dropping grenades in the basement with that one.
Oh, man. Hey, Bulls.com. Check it out, man. Have you check out NBCSportsChicago.com, go to Bulls.com. Check it out.
If you thought there was friction between Zach and this coaching staff now, can you imagine if it was, okay, Zach, you're playing 24 minutes off the bench. We're going to give you 2. No. Things would get really ugly really fast publicly from the clutch end of things, and it would be messy. So realistically, despite Sam's suggestion, I do not see that happening. I do not. I mean, you can argue P. Will is better suited for the 3, possibly, but given those 3 wing players, I don't think it's in anybody's best interest for any of them to come off the bench with that. Defensively challenged for sure.
Yeah, and this is where the rotation gets interesting, because to me the 3 locks then off the bench are Ayo, Jalen Smith, and Buzelis. So we're up to 8 right away. Now Billy usually likes play 9. You've got, and sometimes he'll go 10, obviously, but you've got Dalen Terry, Lonzo Ball, Torrey Craig, Julian Phillips, Jevon Carter, and Chris Duarte still hanging out there. So this is where it's going to be really interesting to see how this rotation shakes out. I don't even have a guess for this podcast as to what Billy's going to do with that. I just know the 3 locks to me off the bench are Io, Jalen Smith, and Buzelis.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with that. I think you probably are going to see 9-man rotation from Billy most games, so I would include Torrey Craig as that fourth guy off the bench.
That means Dalen Terry's not playing. That means Julian Phillips is not playing. That flies in the face of a youth movement. So I don't know, man. And then Lonzo Ball, if he's healthy, he's going to play.
Yes, if he's healthy, you're right.
I don't know how they're going to pull this off, quite frankly. I really don't.
The huge wild card in that situation is Lonzo, and what exactly is he going to be able to do from a physical and health standpoint come this season? Certainly, if we're talking about opening night in October, which we are, I think the hope is that Lonzo can play at that point. But those are all questions that are not going to be answered until training camp starts. And even if Lonzo's given the all clear, I think the ramp up during the preseason, during the regular season, will be extremely conservative. Off the bench for Lonzo, to me, means 12 minutes, 3-4 minute stretches, 2 6-minute stretches, whatever it might be. But you're right, Casey. That's a major wild card, because if Lonzo can play, if he's been cleared, if he's healthy, he's got to be getting minutes. And then who of that group you just listed is not going to get minutes because of it? Jalen Smith is a lock to get minutes because of his position in front court. And Buzelis, to me, is as well. Like there's nothing that can change the two of those guys getting minutes this season. But then you get into, we saw the development Io had last season. Like you can't then go Io, you're only playing 12 minutes a game now, right? Like he's got to get significant minutes off the bench. He's got to. But to what Casey just said, then what happens to Phillips? What happens to Terry? What happens to Carter? What happens to Craig? Craig didn't take his player option just so he can sit on the bench and watch, which, by the way, maybe it's not his choice. By the way, do not discount the Craig veteran leadership aspect to this team. With DeRozan now on the Kings, I think Craig is likely going to be that kind of vocal person in the locker room. He's very, very good with young players, specifically with Io. And I think that will continue, that he'll make a major contribution to the development of players, both in practice, on the bench, during games. But
it's tough to do that if you don't play.
It's harder, right? It's harder. I mean, he can see things from the bench and point it out. And like when Io's coming off the floor or Terry's coming off the floor, he certainly can act as an extra coach in that moment from what he's seeing. But it's a lot easier. There is more credit and weight given to a player's opinion when they're playing significant minutes. So rotation wise, though, do you see that what Casey and I laid out? Do you see that as probably being the probable rotation, Tony?
Yeah, I think that's the most likely scenario. But this is the position that they put themselves in, right? By constructing this roster, now you're shifting your motivations and your future goals midway through this thing. And I'm pretty sure there's a question later down the road is like, how do you manage both? And I remember asking Jim Boylan that when he was here, when we thought that there should have been a youth movement, and he's trying to like go out and like win games by all means necessary, and we know how difficult that is. We know the difficulties of trying to win on a significant level, and then also trying to grow a youth movement. You just can't do it successfully either way. You got to pick a lane. And that's the problem with this current roster as it is you got a lot of people with different motivations and different goals trying to play for one team, and it's going to show forth in different ways. It will. Zach is trying to get out of here. Vooch is just kind of I don't know what his personal goals are, but Vooch is a veteran with a big contract. So there's a lot of different things kind of going on, and which will be very, very interesting come media day.
I want to throw a hypothetical out there for a starting lineup change. I do not see this occurring in October, but as we get into late November and December and beyond, I could see a situation in which Jalen Smith is starting over Vooch at the 5. Just throwing that out there, given Smith's ability to hit the three, and if Vucevic's poor shooting from last season, if that continues into this season, I think from a offensive standpoint, there may be a change could happen there, but that's a long way away. All right, guys. The second part of that question from Adam was what your target of over/under wins is for the Bulls this season. I'll start with this one. I know there are a lot of people who think after what they did this offseason, they're now a lock to get 20 plus wins in the 20 to 29 range. I think they've got actually a decent amount of talent on this roster. A lot of it's young, a lot of it's unproven, but barring significant injuries to a couple key players, I don't see them losing less than 30 games or winning less than 30 games this season. It just seems like they've got too much talent in certain spots. Yes, defensively, it's going to be a significant issue, especially with the starting lineup that we outlined. But my over-under for wins this season for the Bulls, I will put like 33.5. I don't think it's necessarily going to be what they need to contend for a play-in spot, which obviously have to be 38, 39 and above. But 33.5, I think is a realistic target for over/under wins for this team. There's still questions to be answered, but they still have talent on this team. This isn't a, and there are a lot of, here's the other part, especially in the Eastern Conference, there are a lot of bad teams in this league. Like they're not anywhere near as bad as the Wizards or the Hornets are going to be. We really don't know what the Pistons are going to be this season. They've made some significant changes on their end, but they're still not going to be a good team this year. Like there are going to be some opportunities to pick up easy wins across the board. And the West has some teams that are really not that great too. So to me, 33.5 is a realistic win total for this team.
I was going to set it right there too. That's why I went, wow, when you said 33.5. I was going to set it right there. And I would probably have it just under. I think I'd have them at 33 or 32. So I'd probably, early prediction, I'm going 32 and 50, 33 and 49, somewhere in there. So, yeah, we're thinking alike.
Tony?
Well, I went and looked at Vegas, and we're not sponsored by anybody, so nobody is going to get the pub here.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like you guys are definitely a little, well, not over.
A little bit high.
A little bit higher. They have them either at 29.5 or 27.5 for
that's low
wins. And I don't think it has anything to do with the talent wise. I think, again, like I mentioned before, it's the motivations, right? Like, how do you even go about, and when there's mixed motivations, there's not really one goal in sight for everybody to kind of pull the rope towards you. It leads to dysfunction. It leads to missed opportunities in games. And on top of, they already had that with the roster before, right? Where they were losing games that they were supposed to win with a better roster. So based on that information, I think I'm going to lean towards the high 20s for this team. And you guys mentioned also that there should be wins that can be picked up. I don't trust the Bulls, and I just did a general, okay, let me get a look at every team in the NBA all at once, all 30, and see where the easy wins are. I mean, even the Hornets, right? I can say Hornets and Wizards, the Bulls should be able to either sweep or win that series. I don't know if I can say any other team that I would be confident enough to say that. Utah.
I mean, Toronto and Brooklyn in my mind.
Toronto and Brooklyn.
Yeah, like Nets are in a full rebuild.
I don't know if I can definitively say that they can beat those teams on a consistent enough basis. So, and if we add those teams, that's just 4 teams. So if I can definitively say that they are better than at least 6 teams in the NBA, I think the high 20s for me is more realistic with this group, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's fair. I mean, I think the only team in the West that they're definitively better than is probably Portland. I think last year, if you look at the bottom of the West, Memphis, just by the getting Ja back in the addition of Edey, I think is going to give them a lot more wins. I mean, I would not be surprised if they go from like 27 to 47 wins. This season, the Spurs are going to be better just by the development of the roster around them. So, like, but I come back to the East, Tony, and I come back to Detroit, Washington, Charlotte, Toronto, Brooklyn. Like, those are not good teams. They're really not. And the Bulls are, in my mind, are better than that group, roster-wise, talent-wise. And so, by the nature of how many games you get against those other teams, if the Bulls were in the West, I'd say low 20s is probably realistic. But given the Eastern Conference, like 31, 32, 33 wins, like is in my mind realistic. So very good question by Adam for that one. All right, let's move on. KC, this is right up your alley. This is from Eric at Eric H. Sop. What years of the Sacramento second-round picks the Bulls received in the DeRozan trade? Are there any protections that you know of? And also, why were the particulars of that trade never officially announced?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes teams announce what years. Maybe they're still negotiating at the time the release came out. I don't have an answer to that. Sometimes years are listed, sometimes they're not. I was told that the picks are 2025 and 2029. And I do not believe there are any protections. So it's just straight up second round picks. So there you go. And the Bulls didn't have a second round pick until 2029. So now they've replenished the coffers a little bit. Actually, wait, they might have had 2028. It could be the 2028 could be a second round pick if Portland hasn't conveyed that first round pick in the Lauri Markkanen deal, and they'll owe the Spurs a second round pick in 2028 if they haven't conveyed a first round pick in the DeMar DeRozan deal, but I believe that they'll be conveying that maybe as soon as next year. So yeah, it's 2025 and 2029 is what I've been told.
Next question for Riley. This is something we kind of discussed a little bit, but we can expand on. The team, this is from at McD Riley 97. The team seems to want to get younger while not openly tanking. How do you project roles for Matas, Terry, and Phillips? Will vets like Jevon Carter, Craig, and Duarte get an edge over them early on, or will the young guys get first chance at those minutes? So we talked a little bit about the rotation, but that's specific to the vets versus young players in the bench role. How do you see that shaking out?
Yeah, I think it's too early to answer. I don't mean to be bad podcasting, but I mean, it's July here. We haven't even got to training camp yet. We don't have a sense from Billy how he's going to handle the roster. But, to your point, and to the questioner's point, when you mentioned Torrey Craig, you see him in the rotation. I immediately said that leaves Dalen, Terry, and Julian Phillips on the outside looking in. And that to me runs counter to what they're doing. So I probably would go the other way. I think Julian Phillips and Terry will get cracked at rotational minutes. So, and kind of what Tony was saying before, like, what is this team's goal? I mean, is it to try to scratch out a play-in victory, or is it to develop young players? My sense is it's the latter, especially because if they don't make the play-in, they have a chance to keep that top 10 pick that they owe the Spurs. So if you're asking me to guess, I'm going to guess that those young guys are in the rotation, and this is a full-on developmental year for the Bulls.
Tony, if you were divvying out the minutes in the rotation, how would you break that group up?
Oh, for me, I mean, I've already kind of figured out, like, Dalen Terry I don't think he's long for the Bulls, in my opinion. If it was me, I was shocked that he was not in summer league, and I'm thinking, like, what do they think of Dalen Terry if he is not playing in summer league? I was confused by that, but I think Matas, and who has shown you the most, promise, at least in the short term, I think you got to play Matas, and then I think you got to play Julian Phillips. I mean, he was good his rookie year. I think we all can agree that we liked what he brought when he got minutes and when he entered the game. And I want to see what that looks like in year two with a consistent role. Duarte was out of the league last year. He's going to have to, for me, prove that he needs to be on this roster. As a whole, Torrey Craig, I guess in short, I'm going with the youth movement. Um, I, the guards is too packed for Jevon. We already see what that is. If somebody wants to, if we can pair him up, maybe in a Zach trade, if somebody wants can use him in a more properly and consistently, I would do that. And Torrey Craig, it's look, I need to play my young forwards. Like I have to see what we have so I can lay this foundation. The worst thing that can happen at the end of this is if we don't know who's going to be here long term. And I know we've had that, and it feels like I've said that and have heard that over the course of my Bulls watching is seeing what we have. But you have to see what you have with the young guys. So that's kind of where I would disperse the minutes.
Of the players that Riley mentioned within this, I think Matas is the only one who's a lock to get consistent minutes this season. I think given Billy's coaching history, I think regardless of developing year, what their goal is, what they realistically are, where they're going to be in January, I do see him leaning on Craig a little bit, especially in the position of need. Like they need defense up front. And that's why I think Craig will get some minutes over some of those other guys like Terry and Phillips. I was wondering the same thing, Tony, about Summer League. And Casey, I don't know if you've looked into this, but I was a little surprised why we didn't see Terry out there in Vegas this year. And I know it's historically meant for first and second year players for Summer League, but given that Terry hasn't gotten a ton of NBA minutes under his belt, do you think there would have been value in seeing him in Vegas to start and play in those games?
I saw that. I'm kind of on the fence on it. I would probably lean towards the Bulls, and Terry probably making the right decision. I mean, look, he was pretty consistently in the rotation down the stretch of the season. Mm-hmm. I didn't see a lot of third-year guys out there. Barchamp from the Bucks played. I don't know how many games he played. Jaquez, I think, only played 2 games. Made a second team all Summer League, even though he only played in 2 games. So, I don't know.
Like when I saw that, I was like, come on now. Like Jaquez is out there. Like, come on. Like suit up for at least 1 game.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't put a lot of value in Summer League, so that's probably why I'm kind of indifferent about the whole thing, to be honest with you.
It is Summer League. Yeah.
A third-year player is not going to get a lot from Summer League. And, quite frankly, he was either probably working out on the side of the practices or practicing with the team, things like that. So that's just as important. And actually, Hawkins is only a second-year player. My bad. I messed that up. But Barchamp was a third-year player. But anyway, yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of indifferent about Summer League. So I don't see Dalen Terry getting a lot of value about playing Summer League. He played last year and he wasn't very good. So it's like, I don't know.
I mean, that's the question, Casey. Is there value? Is there more value in having him play, or is there more value in having work with the coaching staff back at the Advocate Center during that time? And I think that's ultimately probably the reason why they decided not to have him take part in Summer League this year in Vegas. We're going to do a couple more quick ones. We've got so many great questions that we're actually going to have to do a part 3 of the Mailbag podcast. So thank you, everybody. If you didn't get to hear your question in part 1 or in this edition of part 2, please listen for part 3 later next week. This next one is one that you're certainly both welcome to answer, but it's really right up my wheelhouse because I half jokingly retweeted the Bulls Talk tweet and said, hey, if you want to ask Star Wars questions, please feel free as well. This question is from Michael Ballack. Would Buzelis be a Sith or a Jedi? That's a very good question, Michael. The answer to me is he's 100% a Sith. Sith rely on emotion for their power. They were all on that energy, and they are the opposite of the Jedi in that way. And from what we've seen of Buzelis, both in his confidence and in giving interviews, certainly in KC, if you missed that podcast, please tune in. But the energy and the emotion we've seen on the court from him, he's 100% a Sith. Now, are there some Jedi-like qualities to Buzelis? Absolutely. But if he was a Force user at a young age, I think that the Jedi Order would have rejected him, and that you would have seen the Sith, a powerful Sith Lord, take him under the wing and develop that emotion that he has, and he would become a very powerful Sith as well. So thank you, Michael, for that question. Gentlemen, if you have anything to add to that, please feel free.
I think you're just speaking in a foreign language. So I have no idea what the hell is going on, quite frankly.
I actually did have something on this one.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, because I do. I follow the lore. I'm not adept on quoting everything, but I do follow the lore and enjoy the lore of Star Wars. And the more I dive into the lore of the Sith versus the Jedi, it feels it doesn't feel like it's good versus evil to me. I think it feels like just perception, right? Like, we're not robots, right? Like, of course you want to have command of your emotions, but emotions happen if you're a human being. So trying to deny those emotions, I think, is not a great way to go about life and enjoying life without those emotions. So I get where the Sith is coming from, but I also get where the Jedi is coming from. But I don't 100% agree with everything the Jedi. They're trying to do the same thing, but just in a different way than the Sith, in terms of taking control of the mass expansion of the universe. So, like, I don't think there's a problem with being, a Sith. I think there's a middle ground that could be had, and I think your answer in being the gray Jedi on Twitter,
yes,
gray, or what Samuel Jackson's character was, right, with his purple lightsaber of being able to use both sides of the Force in an effective way, I think could be Matas, if he controls all the aspects of the Force. I think he could be I guess the Samuel L. Jackson of the
he's the Mace Windu of the Bulls.
Yeah.
The harnessing the dark and light side energies to what the gray Jedi are known for. Casey has no idea what that means, which is great looking at his face right now for that one. All right, last question from Hector Garcia. Who is a really good one? Who, if anyone, on the current Bulls roster will be on this team the next time they are in the NBA Finals? And part two, which is really for me, Darth Maul was underutilized, true or false? So I'll first answer that Darth Maul question, then we'll get into the Bulls question. Yes, fully true. His character was much more fleshed out in the Clone Wars series. And then after that, into Star Wars Rebels, there's some amazing stuff with Darth Maul and that, where we got to see like his true abilities and power and motivations and all those things. In terms of the films themselves, just criminally underutilized within the prequel trilogies, and we only saw him from one film. You can't kill off a character of that caliber in the first film of the prequel trilogy. So KC, the question that you'll want to answer of that part is there a single player on this Bulls roster who will be on this team the next time the Bulls are in the NBA Finals?
I'm going no, but if there is one, it's Matas Buzelis, because he's 19 and that gives the Bulls a lot of run. I mean, they're a long way away. Come on. I mean, we're talking about a non-playoff team for the last two seasons. So it takes a lot to win an NBA championship, and the Bulls are pretty far away right now, obviously.
Tony, there's got to be more, somebody potentially besides Matas that could be on this team.
I mean, looking at contract structures, maybe Kobe.
He's a tough one, though. That's why I didn't go with Kobe.
Yeah.
He signed that 3-year deal. They can only do 140% off of his final number.
Yeah.
That's going to be a dicey. You're going to have to get cap space to resign that guy. That's going to be a dicey negotiation for Kobe White. So
yeah.
But
so
who's coming off the books in 26? Right? Isn't Zach off the books that year?
Yeah.
Yeah, let me double check.
Yeah, but I was thinking either, outside of Matas, who's the obvious pick, is either Kobe or Josh Giddey. Those are my two kind of excerpts on that. But like Casey said, they're so far away for a real legit finals trip. Like, people forget the Rose Bulls never went to the finals.
Right.
Like this is very, very difficult to do. And in order to make those finals, you need a generational Hall of Fame talent. Is that person on this team, and where's that person coming from? So it's very difficult to see where that person is and where they're going to come from, considering how this has gone so far. And I would, and this is just on me, and this is just me, not Bulls Talk Podcast Incorporated or KC or Bulldog. This is Tony Gill saying this. I can't, like, is AK and Mark Eversley going to be here by the time the team makes NBA Finals? I have that question, in my head there, because I just don't see it right now. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on that.
By the way, I had forgotten Zach has a player option for the 26-27 season. So will he be on this roster at that point? Maybe, maybe not. This certainly we'll see if there are still trade rumors between now and summer of 2026 in regards to Zach LaVine. But my heart says hopefully Kobe's on this roster the next time they're in the NBA Finals. But like the last time they were in the NBA Finals was 16 years ago. So like it's been a long time, and I hope it's not another 16 years plus where we are today before to get to the finals again. So KC's answer is probably right, just because he's taken the youngest player on the roster who's likely to be under team control for the longest. But my heart is the hope that Kobe gets a new deal after his current one, and that in the next 7 years they can be an NBA Finals team. But they're not close right now, so it's going to have to be that second contract for that to occur. So
man, I'm going to be in my mid-40s by the time they get to the finals.
I'd love to be in my mid-40s.
The different aspects of the podcast here. So thank you, everybody. This has been part 2 of our Bulls Mailbag. We will have part 3 coming because we've got a lot more questions to get to. Thank you, everybody. And in case you thought of a question that didn't get asked, hit us up on Twitter and we'll try and answer it in part 3. We certainly love it. So for KC Johnson, you can find his work on Twitter /X, KCJ Hoop, and certainly NBCSportsChicago.com. For Tony Gill, our podcast producer behind the scenes, I'm Kevin Anderson. Thank you, everybody, for watching on YouTube, listening, subscribing, commenting, all those things. We always appreciate it. And I appreciate the Star Wars questions as well. Hopefully my answers would give some clarity for those of you who know Star Wars. Besides that, thank you, everybody. Have a great week. Have a great weekend. And go Bulls.
All right, now that's over. I want to tell you the 3 keys to being a real Chicago sports fan. It takes guts, sacrifice, and downloading the NBC Sports Chicago app. When there's highlights, you can pounce on them. When there's exclusive insights, you listen and take notes. And you won't get blindsided with the push alerts. So download it